It's Thursday, October 20th, 2022, and this is FRCMedia News. I'm Keith Tebow. Fall River Schools released a first look at this year's MCAS results. We speak with Geoff Diehl, the Republican nominee for governor, and the United Way of Greater Fall River officially launches its annual campaign this weekend with United We Move. All this and more coming up. Fall River School Superintendent Maria Ponce this week provided the school committee with a first look at how the district fared in this spring's Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System, or MCAS testing, for grades 3 through 8 and grade 10. Across the Commonwealth, test scores are significantly down from where they were prior to the pandemic, with Fall River and other urban districts faring the worst.
Our 2019 was the last time where there was a full MCAS administration. 2019, because 2020, no tests were administered because that was the year that we shut down. 2021, only half of the tests was administered, and that was also administered in various ways. Kids took it from home or they took it in school, so that was different. And in 2022, this is where we resumed back to full MCAS administration.
In just about every grade level, scores for English, language arts, math, and science in Fall River were below those of other urban districts across the state. The biggest decreases were seen within grades 3 through 5, where students lost in-person instruction in what are considered to be their formative learning years. Another big factor in the decline is the increased rate of absenteeism of students across the district.
Urban districts report a 39% chronically absent average, while Fall River Public Schools is at 48% chronically absent. Those are kids that are missing 10% or more of the school year, 18 or more days. Our kids need to be in school. They can't learn if they're not here. And we need to work with families as well as with students in order to bring them into school. Average days missed in Fall River Public Schools in 2022 was 21 as compared to 13 in 2019. The percent of students missing 10% or more was 48%, as I've just said, as compared to 25% in 2019. 25%, double.
Superintendent Ponce shared with the committee some of the positive and negative results of individual schools in Fall River.
Spencer Borden continues to lead our district in the 53rd percentile, so great work being done over there. And Henry Lord Community School exited the bottom 10% and is now in the 12th percentile. And that's huge because going up any point, it's hard. It's hard work, and you really have to bring a mass of students. So, and I know that they had been working. I was there when Principal Bronhard spoke to the staff about that. Certainly we know that 12th percentile, we have a long way to go, but moving out of that bottom 10, that's a huge accomplishment. Watson also went from the 6th percentile to the 10th percentile, which they're still at the 10th, but it also signals to us that they're getting ready to exit, which is also great news for us. We know that we've seen some good stuff happening there. We do have some concerns, in particular, CUS dipped from the 14th percentile to the 8th percentile, which is a concern. So we have some work to do there. Doran dipped from the 31st percentile to the 20th percentile. I have met with those principals. Sylvia dipped from the 38th percentile to the 17th percentile.
Parents can expect to receive individual student MCAS results in the near future. The election 2022 voting season has begun for many Fall River residents as approximately 7,700 ballots were shipped last week. Fall River is in a unique position this year as two elections are being held simultaneously: the state election and a special city election, asking voters whether the city should become a member of the MBTA as part of South Coast Rail. Fall River Election Commission Chair Ryan Lyons says separate ballots are required for each election. Those requesting ballots by mail will receive two mailings and need to be attentive as to the procedure to vote and return those ballots.
State election ballots were mailed out first because we received them at the end of last week. And this past Monday, we mailed out the special municipal election ballots to all applicants. So they're on their way. Just, check your mailbox within the next couple of days. And just to be on the safe side, please make sure that you are signing the affidavit on your EV7 envelope and you're putting the correct ballot into the correct return envelope. And when you look at the markings on your envelope, everything has already been pre-stamped state election as well as city election. So just to be on the safe side, please make sure you're double checking which ballot you're putting which ballot you're putting your envelope into to make sure that it is the correct one, because if you put the wrong one in there, unfortunately it will be rejected. And do please make sure you're not putting two ballots into one envelope and returning it to my office, because in that case the incorrect ballot, the wrong place ballot, will have to be rejected.
Voters can still request a mail or absentee ballot with the deadline to apply of November 1st. Mr. Lyon says all mail ballots must be in the possession of the elections office by 8 p.m. on November 8th.
You can either return your ballots in the mail. You're welcome to drop them off directly here to the Board of Elections office on the 6th floor. And of course, we do have the drop box located outside of the 3rd Street entrance. I keep our drop box out there to coincide with the hours of the building. If you come after hours, after 4 o'clock, you are welcome to put the ballot into the treasurer's mail slot, and that ballot will be delivered to my office first thing in the morning.
Early in-person voting in Fall River begins this weekend. Mr. Lyon says he expects a better early voting turnout compared to the September 6th state primary.
We only had about 150 voters that elected to vote in person for the state primary election. We've had in-person early voting for the general election going back to 2016, so I think the public is more aware of it for the November general election. The difference going forward, thanks to the Vote Act, is that it runs for 14 consecutive days, all the way through October 22nd, all the way through November 4th, including both weekends. So it starts on the 22nd. The weekend hours are going to be from 8 to 2. Monday through Thursday is going to be 9 to 5. And then on Fridays, it's going to be 9 to 3. There will be parking spaces reserved for voters outside of the Sullivan Drive entrance. So please, I encourage anyone who has not elected to vote by mail and will not be in the city on election day, please, you take advantage of voting in person.
Because there are two separate elections being held on the same day, those casting ballots in person will be required to check in twice, once for each election. On Election Day, November 8th, polls will open across 27 precincts in Fall River at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. Last week, we spoke with the supporters and opponents of the special Fall River ballot question on the city's membership to the MBTA for South Coast Rail. The project's administration held a public hearing last week to update the community on the progress of the project and answer residents' questions. Opponents claim the cost to Fall River for South Coast Rail will be a financial burden taxpayers cannot afford. At the meeting last week, Senior Director of Administration Randy Hunt told the crowd that is not the case.
Fall River has a multiplier of 1. It's 1. It's never going to change to another number under the current law. So what happens is, in Fall River, the assessment that we've calculated as a pro forma calculation would be about $600,000 of fee to be in the MBTA service area. But how much does Fall River pay to SERTA, to the Regional Transportation Authority? $1,500,000. That more than offsets the $600,000 and leaves you with a cushion of nearly $1 million. So there is no net amount of money that Fall River will have to pay to the MBTA by voting to become part of the service area. That's a fact.
Meantime, we continue to speak with the candidates that you'll find on this year's ballot. This week, we speak with Republican nominee for governor Geoff Diehl. He faces Democrat Attorney General Maura Healey and Libertarian Kevin Reed for the right to succeed Governor Charlie Baker. Here are some excerpts of our conversation. When we spoke last time, and for people who didn't see that original interview, you've got some South Coast ties, don't you?
I do. I used to work at Poyant Signs out of New Bedford. The industrial park route or exit 7 off of 140, but I did a lot of work on the South Coast with a lot of small businesses. So I had a chance to really travel the entire area, all the way from Wareham, to Fall River and Somerset. I mean, just all those small communities working with small retailers to help with their signage industries or signage needs. But then of course I ran for state representative in 2010, got into the legislature, and kind of again took on a different the entire state when I was trying to help people.
Yeah. I do want to get into some of the issues, and we spoke a lot about issues last time, but how is the second part of this race now different from the primary? Obviously, there were some issues that probably you and Chris Doty, did kind of meet eye to eye on, and some of the Republican conservative type issues. How does your focus change now in the last 3 weeks of the campaign as we're recording this?
Yeah, actually, from my perspective, I had run for U.S. Senate in 2018. I had built a really strong base of support. I got about 1 million votes in that election cycle, more than the Democratic nominee for governor then. Although I didn't win, I was able to, I think, connect with people around the entire state. So I actually went into this election cycle knowing quite a bit about what I think. It wasn't about Republican primary. It wasn't about, Democratic base. It was about what everybody in Massachusetts needed. So those were the issues I was trying to focus on, whether in your region, the fishing industry, or, just things like very simple things like the cost of energy, fuel, gas, electricity right now. It's hurting homes. Those were the issues I tried to focus on, regardless of whether it was a Republican primary or not. And so, of course, I think in the primary, the people saw that I should be the nominee. I think the case right now is I'm trying to make that like the same thing. It's not about party issues right now. It's about what's important for the entire state of Massachusetts. We've got a tough economy. We've got a situation where, I think people are feeling like in schools, the parents want to have more of a say with what the kids are learning. Also, a lot of people were fired because of the vaccine mandates for the state. On day one, I'm going to return every state worker to their jobs. And so that's the things I've been trying to talk about, regardless of whether it was the primary or if it's the general election.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the candidates this type of question. I don't think I asked you this in the primary, but if you're one-on-one with someone and someone comes up to you and say, Geoff, how are you different from Maura Healey? Why should I vote for you? In that short interlude, because we do have a short interlude here,
Yeah.
What would you tell voters?
Well, again, my wife and I also own a small business. So not only did I work for a business in New Bedford, but I also worked with my wife to invest everything we had into that small business. Started 20 years ago. It's been successful. She runs it. It's a performing arts school. And so we understand what it's like to put everything you have into something and hope that it goes well. And you work hard every day to make that happen. So I have private sector experience, but I also have served in the legislature for 8 years. And I know what it's like to represent 40,000 people in 3 towns that I live in Whitman. I represented Abington and East Bridgewater. But my goal there was to try to make sure I listened to them as much as possible. And when I was on Beacon Hill, was their voice about what was important for the towns and for each individual family and person. And so I think my difference is that I've got that hybrid experience, but on top of that, I've also been able to successfully do things like I stopped the gas tax in 2014 from going up. It was going to be tied to inflation. It was going to go up. The tax would go up every year automatically without a vote. That was going to hit middle to low income families the hardest. So I want to basically try to protect people and give them economic freedom, more choice with their own dollars. Maura Healey is for question one. She wants to have the more taxes on people who are successful. If you own a home or you start a small business and it grows over time, she wants to punish that with this additional question one tax. That's not what I believe in. I think also the other big thing for her is she wants to, or she's proud of, blocking 2 natural gas pipelines into Massachusetts. Right now, the cost of energy in our state is going up astronomically. We are about to see a 54% increase. A 54% increase in the price of electricity for each household in Massachusetts. That is just a deal breaker when you've got so much other costs right now, inflation, high mortgage rates, high cost of food. We just can't afford that. And yet that's something that she's proud of because she believes in getting us fossil fuel free by 2030. I'm for renewable energies, but in a reasonable manner. You can't go from A to B and bankrupt households in the process. And so a difference of approach is also, I think, what I have apart from her.
I asked you this question back in the primary, and obviously it's pertinent to the people here in Fall River and the South Coast. Fall River, a gateway city. You said you also worked again in New Bedford at Poyant Signs. How important is it to meet the needs of the gateway cities? Many times, a lot of people down here will say, "Well, Boston doesn't," and I'm putting my air quotes up, "care about us. They care about Boston and the suburbs around Boston." What can you tell people of Fall River and the South Coast and other gateway cities on how you can represent them?
Sure. I mean, I live next to Brockton. I live in the small town of Whitman. We've always felt neglected by Beacon Hill. We always think that they never look really outside the 95 Beltway or the 495 Beltway. So I totally get it. And I think one of the things that my goal is, again, is to work with those gateway cities. In Brockton, I was able to be a partner with a lot of great resources they had in the area, whether it was drug addiction resources or whether it was law enforcement or whether it was the community services that are used for people with disabilities. I've always tried to make sure that those gateway cities have the funding they need to provide a lot of those services that people expect. One thing about addiction services, however, I just want to mention is I feel like we need to push it away from gateway cities and out into the suburbs. The suburbs need to own more of the recovery for that. I was meeting with the mayor of Lawrence and somebody who's from Daybreak Shelter. It's a wet shelter up in Lawrence, and they help people who are homeless with addiction issues. And the mayor was all for helping them trying to find a new facility. But he also said, and he looked right at me and said, I want you to, when you're governor, make sure that you push a lot of these services out into or allow these suburban towns, or tell these suburban towns they need to own some of the addiction recovery services. And I agree with that. Mental health, it originates a lot of times in suburban towns. And if people go to the cities, they might end up becoming homeless and fall into this other trap. So that's just one way I want to make sure that suburban towns absorb some of the things that some of the gateway cities are handling right now. But when it comes to Fall River specifically, I think the other thing too is there's a vote that's coming up on joining the MBTA for South Coast Rail. I think that's something that we can do. I think the MBTA has its challenges, but I think we can walk and chew gum. I think we can work with the South Coast to add the rail services that create more mobility for people around the South Coast region. That's something I'm committed to, and I look forward to helping that because I think it will unlock a lot of additional areas where housing can be built at a lower cost, and that's another big thing, housing costs in Massachusetts.
Final question. You've been supported by former President Trump. Some people in a state like Massachusetts will say that could be a detriment. How do you view that support?
Yeah, well, of course, in the Republican primary, it was important to show that, I always believed in his message, which was putting the American worker first and making sure that, we had immigration laws that made sense. I think the other thing that the former president talked about that was always something that intrigued me when he was running in 2016 was bringing U.S. troops back from foreign engagements that no longer served our common interest. And I think that's something that's very important. Plus, when he was in office, he gave us the lowest unemployment in 50 years. We were energy independent. Those are key things that are important to this very day. So I think this race isn't about national politics. This race is about what's important for each person, their families. It's very important for me for two reasons. Those are my daughters, Kaylee and Emily. They're 20 and 16, and they are the future of my household. And I think I'm trying to work for the future of everybody's household, their kids, their grandkids. And I think they know that, my goal has always been to put those families and their interests first, whether it's their education, their economics, or again, just their general freedom to do what they want in the state. A state that was the foundation of our country. And I think it's just important for Massachusetts to have that balance up on Beacon Hill that gives you all those options.
You can watch our entire interview with Geoff Diehl and other candidates running in the election by visiting our special Election 2022 webpage on our website at frmedia.org. We'll have more FRC Media News right after this.
Here are some job descriptions on the latest hot jobs list from the Mass Hire Fall River Career Center. Accounting Assistant, Family Service Association, located at 101 Rock Street, is looking for a full-time accounting assistant responsible for assisting the accounting department with daily functions, including analysis, monthly, and annual reporting. Job number 175-70261. Team Chair. The Fall River Public School Department, located at 417 Rock Street, is looking for a full-time team chair to assist staff focused on supporting the school in teams teaching and learning initiatives. Job number 175-86258. Clinical Nurse Specialist. UMass Chan Medical School, located at 1240 Innovation Way, is seeking a full-time clinical nurse specialist to provide direct patient care, including psychiatric assessment, diagnosis, treatment, and follow-up care. Job number 175-86258. Sales Floor Associate. Old Navy, located at 520 William S. Canning Boulevard, is looking for a part-time sales floor associate. For more information, call 508-617-4032. Blount Fine Foods, located at 630 Current Road, has an immediate need for the following full and part-time positions. Packaging Associate, job number 175-87918. Safety Technician, job number 175-87919. For more information about these or other positions, visit Mass Hire JobQuest at jobquest.dcs.eol.mass.gov or call the Mass Hire Fall River Career Center at 508-730-5000.
Welcome back. Battleship Cove this week hosted the launch announcement for the next round of the Mass Development and Mass Cultural Council Cultural Facilities Fund grants aimed at financing capital projects of organizations that house arts and cultural activities. The launch also included the announcement of $1.55 million in awards to 15 projects statewide, including $20,000 for Battleship Cove. Mass Cultural Council Executive Director Michael Babbitt says the Cultural Facilities Fund is part of the governor's annual capital spending plan.
Today, with our partners at Mass Development, we are not only celebrating 15 new cultural facilities grants, but also the launch of this year's CFF grant application period. All of this was made possible by our supporters in the legislature and by the Baker-Polito administration, who in May released its fiscal year 23 capital spending plan, which includes $10 million for the CFF grant round again.
Megan Rathbun, Executive Director of Battleship Cove, says the facilities grant will be combined with other funds to upgrade the organization's fleet and expand visitor exhibits.
We are incredibly grateful to receive this funding because it allows us to continue both preserving this ship and restoring compartments that were not previously accessible to the public, the steward's berthing, mess attendant's berthing down on third deck, but it also allows us to tell the story of every member of the crew of this ship. It allows us to tell the story of segregation in World War II, to talk about the fight for integration in the 1940s, and it also allows us to work with our other historic ships, which we have been on a National Endowment of the Humanities grant with the USS Intrepid down in New York, specifically to digitize our historic collections and to create over 40 education programs aimed at telling the underrepresented stories in the Navy.
The United Way of Greater Fall River will launch its 2022-2023 fundraising campaign this Saturday morning with a community wellness event at the Fall River Bioreserve.
United We Move is a walk, run, and ride in the Fall River Bioreserve. We brainstormed it 3 years ago as a campaign kickoff to kind of bring the community together to go move in nature because that's fun. We want it to be family and, community accessible. So it is a walk, which ends up being about 2 miles once you leave the staging area and do the trail loop. It's a run, which you can either do 5 or 10 miles, and it's a gravel bike ride, which is 10 or 20 miles. So there's a little bit of something for everyone. The trails are beautiful. They're a mix of rough road and grass, so they're really like runnable or rideable, even if it's your first trail event. And it's just fun. The third week of October ends up with a lot of beautiful foliage out there. The Watuppa Pond looks great. It's just a really fun way to kick off the United Way fundraising year, get folks out into nature, and move your body and have some fun.
United Way Executive Director Kim Smith says the organization's fiscal year begins in July, and it is well on its way to meeting this year's goal.
The goal this year is $1.2 million, slightly higher than last year, which was $1.5 million. 1.15, sorry. We actually exceeded that goal by about 5% or so, and so, of course, the next natural step is to increase the goal. So it's $1.2 million. We're about 35% of the way there, in part because of the sponsors that we've been able to partner with for both events, our bundled sponsorship opportunities. Together, we've raised close to $100,000 just in the sponsorship opportunities, but we've also had some campaigns running already and some corporate gifts come in, some foundation partners, so we are starting the year off very strong.
The United Way will be celebrating its 75th anniversary later this fall. Ms. Smith says having long-term ties to Fall River makes the United Way a trusted community partner.
The name recognition, the trusted partner, the advocacy, the accountability, all of that is as much as we do with our agencies that we fund, United Way Worldwide does with us as well. So we have, fiscal responsibility that we need to adhere to, guidelines, marketing, all of that, resources that are available to us. And nationwide, United Way is a trusted partner. We saw that with COVID, how folks look to us to see, the leadership opportunities, the collaborative experience, boots on the ground. Really, we had folks say, let's call United Way. They know what's going on. They know everything that's happening in the community. They know what the needs are, or they'll help us find the resources that we're looking for. So absolutely, as a trusted partner, we continue to be, a key leader in a lot of the collaborative efforts that are happening in our community, bringing people together.
Pre-registration for the United We Move event Saturday is closed, but walk-ups are welcome. Registration begins at 7 a.m. with events beginning at 8 a.m. To find out more and contribute to the annual United Way campaign, you can visit uwgfr.org. We will wrap up this edition of FRC Media News right after this.
Hi, welcome to Hot Dogs and Cool Cats. Today we have Goose. Goose here, he is a 2-year-old, medium hair, all orange. He's a boy, of course. He's a very friendly cat. We've had him before with other cats, which he's gotten along with. He still can be playful. You can get him going sometimes with toys, little bell in the ball. He likes that. He's very content. He can be very independent as well, even though he does, enjoy the attention. And you can say he's gonna probably explore around here. He does have that classic cat curiosity. I think he would do well with most kids as long as they're not too rambunctious and too out of control, that sort of thing. I think he would be perfectly tolerant of that. If you'd like to come and meet Goose, you can come down to 300 Linwood Street in Fall River, Massachusetts at Forever Paws Animal Shelter. Today we have Chad. Chad, as you can tell, he is a very big dude. He's 90 pounds. He is a pit mix. He actually came to us as a stray when he first came in. Believe it or not, he was a little bit thinner than this, but we've been putting on a little bit of weight onto him. He does not understand his size. I will say that right now. So if you're thinking of adopting him, you'll definitely have to help him understand that, or at least, be tolerant of it. He is a gigantic baby. I mean, he's basically just a big kid. Absolutely loves to go on walks, loves to play. We would like, because of his size, we would like older children, teenagers and up, that sort of thing. So if you'd like to come down and meet Chad, you can come down to 300 Linwood Street in Fall River, Massachusetts at Forever Paws Animal Shelter.
That's all for this edition of FRC Media News. Please visit our website at frmedia.org for all the latest news and local information. FRC Media News airs Thursdays at 6 p.m. and Fridays at 5:30 p.m. For all of us at FRC Media News, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Thursday.